Welcome to Module 2, Lesson 4, MACE Thinking. Structure the problem so your thinking stops leaking. By the end of this lesson, you will know how to break a complex issue into clear, non-overlapping parts, spot where your analysis is double counting or leaving gaps, and structure a problem in a way that makes better reasoning actually possible. Here's where we sit in Module 2. In Lesson 1, we learned to define the right problem before solving it. In Lesson 2, we separated symptoms from cause from constraint. In Lesson 3, we walked down the root cause ladder to find the level of cause that changes reoccurrence. This lesson is the next move, because once you have defined the problem and identified its causes, the way you structure your analysis determines whether your reasoning holds. You can have the right diagnosis and still communicate it in a way that leaks. This is what MACE fixes. A room full of smart people going nowhere. It is 4:18 p.m. in a strategy review. A consumer product is underperforming. Revenue is off plan. The room is full of options. And every one of them is probably valid. Marketing says awareness is low. Sales says field execution is weak. Product says pricing is off. Finance says margin are under pressure. Customer experience says churn is rising. And then an executive cuts through it all with, put this into a clean analysis and come back tomorrow. Now think about this. This sounds like a fair ask. Here is the real problem. The team does not yet have a structure. They have a collection of concerns. Some of these concerns overlap. Some sit at completely different levels. Some are causes, some are effects. Some just pet theories wearing the costumes of business language. By 7 p.m., they may still be working hard, but still not thinking clearly, because hard work inside a leaking structure does not produce clarity. It produces more elaborate confusion and slides that look busy while the reasoning underneath them drifts. Many professionals do not have a weak effort problem. They have a leaking structure problem. And that distinction matters because you cannot fix a structure problem by working harder inside it. Why does this matter? When your structure is weak, your analysis leaks, and so does your credibility. Take a moment to reflect on this. Think about the last time you were in a long circular meeting where everyone seemed to be making good points and nothing seemed to be resolved. That is often not a people problem. It is a structure problem. The categories are not clean, so the same issue keeps appearing under different labels and the room keeps rediscussing it without realizing they already covered it. Leak 1, double counting. The same issue counted twice under different labels. The analysis looks comprehensive, but it just repeated itself in different language. Leak 2, invisible gap. A major category is missing entirely and nobody notices until the recommendation hits reality. The analysis felt complete because the buckets looked full. Leak 3, level confusion. The pieces are not the same level. Some are causes, some are effects, some are constraints. The analysis keeps looping because the categories are not actually comparable. That matters because the work looks detailed, the slide looks busy, the meetings feel thorough, and the thinking is unstable because the structure underneath it is unstable, and the people in the room who are closest to the problem often cannot see the leak. They are too deep inside the categories to notice the categories themselves are wrong. This is one of the quiet reasons smart professionals get stuck. They can work brilliantly inside the problem, but they cannot yet shape it cleanly enough for another to trust the reasoning. And trust in the reasoning, not just the effort, is what earns influence in a complex room. Clarity does not begin with more analysis. It begins with cleaner buckets. Here's the important idea. Messy thinking often sounds intelligent at first. It uses the right vocabulary. It mentions multiple factors. It feels nuanced. But if the category overlaps or miss key areas, the reasoning will drift, no matter how smart the person delivering it is. Intelligence does not protect you from leak structure. In fact, it can make the leak harder to spot because the intelligent points inside the structure sounds so credible. Before we go deeper into the analysis, make the problem hold its shape. Structure first, then analyze, not the other way around. What does this mean? The strongest move in a messy situation is not to think harder. It is to stop and ask, what is the cleanest way to break the issue into parts? That question, asked before the deep analysis begins, is where the messy thinking lives. And it's a question that most rooms skip entirely because they are already in motion. What MECE actually means in plain language. MECE stands for mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. That sounds like consulting jargons. Let's make it practical. Mutually exclusive. This category do not overlap. Each point has one home. If the same issue can sit in two different buckets, the structure is still fuzzy and needs to be tightened. Test. Can this point live in more than one category? If yes, the bucket needs work. Collectively exhaustive. The categories covers the whole problem. There is no major branch of the issue that has somewhere else to go. If something important does not fit, the structure has a gap. Test. Is there a major part of the issue with no obvious home? If yes, the branch is missing. Now, compare that with the 4 ways weak structure usually shows up in practice. None of these feel obviously wrong when you're building them, which is exactly what makes them worth naming clearly. Categories build as mixed level. Some are causes, some are effects, some are constraints, all in the same buckets. Overlapping buckets. 2 categories that are essentially saying the same thing in different words. And 3, a missing branch. One major area of the problem that has no home in the structure. Comprehensiveness mistakes for clarity. A long list that looks thorough but has no organizing logic underneath it. So reflect on this for a moment. Stronger thinkers notices early when a structure is leaking. They can hear it in a meeting when 2 people are arguing about what sounds like different issues but are actually describing the same thing with different angles. That awareness, the ability to hear the structure problem beneath the content argument, is one of the clearest markers of analytical maturity, and it is learnable. The MECE split tests, 4 steps. This is a tool. Use this when a messy issue has just landed in a meeting and the room is generating a pile of valid points with no clear shape. The goal is not to build the perfect structure on the first pass. The goal is to build a structure clean enough to test. 1. Use the whole problem clearly. What exactly are we trying to understand or solve? 1 sentence. No categories yet, just the whole question. The step matters more than most people give it credit for because a vague whole problem produces vague branches no matter how carefully you build on them. 2. Choose one organizing principle, then create 3 to 5 first-level branches. What logic will the split be based on? The organizing principle is where most people skip too fast. The structure becomes stronger when the branches are based on one clear logic, a journey stage, a function, a time period, a type of user. Mixed logic produces mixed structure. 3. Test for overlap. Can the same point live in more than one bucket? If yes, the structure is still fuzzy. Tighten the boundaries between these 2 categories before you start filling them with analysis. Overlap that gets ignored at the structure stage gets amplified at the analysis stage. 4. Test for gap. Is there a major part of the problem with no obvious home? If yes, add a branch. Do not squeeze a misfit issue into an existing bucket because it is close enough. That is how categories become bloated and how genuine insight gets buried. The rule to carry into any room: 1 point, 1 home, whole picture. If a point has 2 homes, the structure is weak. If a major issue has no home, the structure is incomplete. Run these 2 tests before you start building the analysis inside the branches. Let's take a look at the case, the bank case, and what a cleaner structure changes. We have been working with the same bank throughout Module 2, and deliberately so. In Lesson 1, we defined the problem properly. In lesson 2, we separated symptoms from causes from constraint. In lesson 3, we worked the root cause ladder and found the real issue was branch incentive conflict, not UX. Now, in level 4, the question changes. We now know what the problem is and what is likely causing it, but the team still needs to structure the analysis in a way that other people can follow, test, and trust. This is the MECE challenge, and it's where many smart analyses fall apart at the communication stage. Good diagnosis, leak structure, weakened credibility. Leadership wants a clean view of why digital activation is underperforming before approving more investment. The room's first attempt at a structure looks like this. Weak structure, products overlapping with onboarding, same territory, different label. Marketing, too broad, covers acquisition, messaging, targeting as one bucket. Customers, not a category. Population, too vague to analyze branch by branch. Branch issues, is there a cause, a channel, or a constraint? Cannot tell from the label. Trust, cuts across multiple categories, not a clean first level branch. Onboarding, already inside. Product, this is a level confusion, not a new branch. Stronger structure, acquisition quality. Who is arriving? And are they the right people? Onboarding conversation. What happened inside the flow and where do users drop? Channel conflict. Are branch incentives suppressing digital uptake before users ever arrive? Post sign-up completion. Are users starting but failing to finish, and why? Now, let's build on that. The organizing principle in the stronger structure is the activation journey. Each branch represents a distinct stage where performance can be tested independently. That one decision, choosing a single organizing principle, is what separates a list from a structure. Now, watch what the stronger structure makes possible. Evidence that can be assigned clearly to branches without mixing levels. Branch, evidence that belong here. Acquisition quality. Traffic from campaign is weak quality. Users are arriving who have no real intent to open an account. Onboarding conversion. Users enter the flow but drop before identity verification, the step where friction is highest. Channel conflict. Branch staffs are nudging customers towards in-person sign-up. Digital is being actively suppressed before users reach the app. Post sign-up completion. Users who complete sign-up are not completing KYC. Their account is open but not activated. So reflect on this for the moment. The room stops saying vague things like the product is failing because the structure no longer allows it. Instead, it starts asking sharper questions. Is the problem who we are bringing in, or what happened in the flow, or branch behavior, or failure to complete after sign-up? Each question belongs to a branch. Each branch can be tested independently. That is what the MECE or the MECE thinking does. It turns a blur into a structure that earns trust. Each branch can be assigned an owner. Evidence can be gathered per branch without double counting. Gaps becomes possible. If a channel conflict has no data yet, the team knows exactly what to do to investigate. And the recommendations that emerges from a logical foundation that other people can follow, question, and trust. This is the hidden power of messy thinking. It does not solve the problem by itself. It makes real solving possible and makes the solving visible to others in a way that builds credibility, not just confidence. Apply it now. One messy issue from your current work, structured in 4 clean branches. Take a moment to reflect on this. Think of an issue that currently feels like a pile of valid points, a planning challenge, a performance gap, a team problem that keeps coming up in different forms. Write the whole problem in one sentence, then run the messy splits test. Whole problem. one sentence, the full question you are trying to answer. No categories yet. Organizing the principle. What logic will you use to split this? A journey stage, a function, a time period, or user type? And then 3, first level branches. 3 to 4 buckets based on one logic. Write down, then test them. 4, overlap the test. Can the same point leave more than one bucket? If yes, tighten the boundaries. Then, gap tests. Is there a major part of the issue with no home? If yes, add the branch. Do not reward yourself for speed here. Reward yourself for clear structure. A structure that takes 10 minutes to build properly will save hours of secular discussion inside it. Let me make this practical. The goal is not to introduce Mercy as a framework you announce. It is to use it as a lens that quietly improves the quality of the conversation by naming calmly and specifically when the structure is leaking. Here's what this sounds like in a real room. 1. I think our categories are overlapping. Let's choose one logic for the split. 2. That point is valid, but it does not have a clean home in its structure yet. 3. Before we go deeper, let's test whether these branches actually cover the issue. 4. We're still mixing levels here. Some of these are causes, some are effects. This list is long, but I'm not yet convinced it is structured. If the bucket leaks, the reasoning will leak. Let's tighten the structure first. Let's choose a cleaner organizing principle and rebuild these branches. That matters because the kind of language does not attack the content in the room. It raises the standard of the container holding the content. And over time, people begin to associate you with a particular kind of value, not just analytical depth, but structural clarity, the ability to make a messy conversation hold its shape. This is rare and trusted skill in a complex organization. This week's action. One move to make in your next planning section, escalation or review. In your next planning section, escalation or strategy review, look for the moment when the discussion becomes a pile of good points without a clear shape. You can recognize it. The conversation feels thorough, but nobody can quite summarize where things stand. When this moment comes, say this. Before we go further, let's define the whole problem in one sentence and split it into clean branches that do not overlap. I want to make sure we're all working inside the same structure. Then notice what happens. Does the room get clearer? Do repeated points reduce? Does the discussion move from opinion pile to something that can actually be acted on? This is the shift, and it starts with one sentence. Ask at the right time by the right person in the room who has learned that structure is not a soft skill. It is the front end of every strong analysis. What to carry with you and what becomes possible from here. Clarity does not begin with more analysis. It begins with cleaner buckets and the discipline of building those buckets before you start analyzing. Many professionals do not have a weak effort problem. They have a leaky structure problem. This lesson is how that changes. In lesson 1, you learn to define the right problem before solving it. In lesson 2, you learn to separate the symptom from causes, from constraint. In lesson 3, you learn to find the level of cause that actually changes recurrence. And in this lesson, you have learned to structure the analysis cleanly enough that other people can follow, test, and trust your reasoning. Put these 4 skills together, and something important has changed. You're no longer just a professional who works hard on problems. You're becoming the professional people bring in when the problem is genuinely messy, because they trust that you will define it correctly, separate its layers honestly, find the right cause, and communicate it in a way that holds together under scrutiny. This is a different kind of value, and this is exactly what Model 2 was designed to build. One point, one whole picture. Let's reflect on this. When you structure a problem, do you usually create overlaps, leave gaps, or mix levels? Which of these 3 leaks is more natural for you under pressure? Think of one recent analysis you prepared. Did the categories help the reasoning, or did they just organize a pile of thoughts that were already there? Looking back across Module 2, which of these 4 lessons changes how you approach a problem most? Problem identification, symptom cause constraint, root cause, or the MECE structure? What would change in your recommendation if the problem structure becomes cleaner before the analysis began?